all the time?
I think that's a hard question, Lorraine. I think the ultimate accountability comes at the ballot box once every 5 years. And that there are 2 of those years when there are 2 board members that turn over. The remainder is 1, so it takes a very long time to turn the school board over. So I just want to say I think ultimately that's it. Having served before, I can tell you if you make a wrong decision, your phone rings a great deal, and probably now you get tweeted and texted and all those kinds of things as well. But there isn't any kind of discipline or any of those kinds of things that you can issue. I think I have seen, and Jody addressed this, I think I have seen a whole lot of board action which occurs in sort of isolation. Many of you remember that in 2002, 2003, the district, 450 people in the district worked together to come up with a strategic plan, which was to be a living strategic plan. Many people in this room were in attendance at those sessions as part of the core committee, but also as part of the many groups that met around the city. And many of the issues that we talk about today were addressed in that strategic plan, but the strategic plan was shelved. Superintendent turnover, the plan was shelved. Prior to that, I've been through a lot of these studies, but prior to that, we had just done, about 2001, I think, we had done an open space technology exercise in our community, where I believe there were between 160 and 200 people who took part in that at the Peoria Civic Center and other places. We put together our goals and our belief system and our values and where were we going to go from there. So the strategic plan was based somewhat on open space. But again, in a very short period of time, we had done that. We spent quite a lot of money to do that, for it to just have been dumped. And if you want copies of the strategic plan, call the school board or call me, because I can provide you some of the information. But what we lack, I'm getting off the subject, but this is my soapbox. What we appear to lack, and this would help to hold the board accountable, I think, as well as everybody else, is a plan, whether it's that strategic plan or something else. But for the last 6 years, and I can't talk about Dr. Lathan, she's too new, but for the 6 years prior to that, we seem to be, and Debbie will shoot me down for saying this, but we seem to be shooting from the hip without a lot of thought about what was going to happen because of this decision or that. And I would throw out at you the houses that were purchased at Glen Oak Park. That was done without public knowledge until it happened, okay? So, and I would venture to say that the Woodruff closing was done in a similar manner to that, without much input or without much thought about what the real ramifications were going to be. So, what was the question, so I can go back and answer it?
How would you keep them accountable?
Just vote for me. That's all I can tell you. The good news for the good news for the District 3 people is there is a vacant seat, so it's not like one of us is challenging somebody who's an incumbent. So, and it's a write-in, DEISSLER.
I have 4 points in response to that. Number one is that there's a need for a strategic plan and metrics and accountability in terms of just the way a business runs. I've spent a good part of my career doing that. I work in the strategy and business development for the enterprise I work for, and that's what I do for a living. Second is feedback. I don't think the District 150 board lacks feedback at its public meetings. I seem to see an awful lot of that. Third is the news media plays a role in this, and they report the stories, and that is a form of feedback as well, not just for what people read, but also what the board members read. And the fourth thing is, if the board acts irresponsibly, the financial markets provide feedback, and that is the cost of its debt, its bond ratings, and its ability to roll over its finances, if it has to do that, is all disciplined by the financial markets. If you don't have some sense of financial discipline, the markets provide it for you.
Jan's right, it's very difficult to talk about being accountable as board members, because there really isn't a way except for at the voting booth. But number one, I think the board members hold each other accountable. in our discussions and the information that we share with each other. I do hear from a lot of people. I think I am held accountable because you're absolutely right. If you don't make a decision that someone agrees with, they will let you know. And I appreciate that because sometimes people have different perspectives than I do, and you need to get that information from the public. There are a lot of times that if the public doesn't notify us, there are things going on in the district that board members don't know about because we're not involved in the day-to-day thing. But I will tell you, I feel like my first obligation as a board member is to the students in this district. I was elected to represent the students because it is impossible for me to represent the interest and the opinion and the want of every voter. If I have 3,000 voters that elected me, it is impossible for me to do what every one of those people want me to do. So in the end, we have to gather the information, do our due diligence, ask lots of questions on issues, and then make decisions that we feel are based on what is in the best interest of the children of the district.
I feel that the board members are, in the long run, very responsible for what is coming out of the school, what they get out of school. I find that's very, very important. And any other way, I think I need the input from voters. I don't have enough experience to say, oh, the heck with the voters, I'm here on my own and I'm going to talk to you all. I like to have voters come up, phone me up, tell me something that they want to know, and I'll be darn ready to find out what's going on. And I'll be working for you guys. Give me your vote.
There's been a lot in the paper about restructuring Peoria High. And I understand after 3 years not making adequate yearly progress, a school can go into restructuring. I want to know what you think about restructuring Peoria High.
Okay, I'll go first.
All right.
You are absolutely right. I'm not sure if it's 3 years, Dr. Wortham, but after a certain length of time, if they do not make adequate yearly progress, they have to go into restructuring. What is happening right now is that the district is planning to apply for a grant that could give us over 3 years, up to $6 million to help with that restructuring process, very similarly to what happened at Manual. A few years back when the community committee was put together to restructure Manual, the impetus was because of not making AYP. And now last year we applied for this same grant for Manual and luckily have received that. I think we have to maybe reapply every year. I'm not sure about that. But this way we are going to have an additional up to $6,000 to help us with $6 million, I'm sorry. Big difference. To help with that process. Manual has completely changed the way they're doing things, and that's the idea of restructuring. Is obviously what's been going on at Peoria High has not been working, and so we have to take some drastic measures to make changes, and it's through the restructuring process that is accomplished. So that's what's happening. Do I support that? I absolutely do, because we have to do something for those children at Peoria High the same way as we came up with a plan at Manual. It may not be the same plan. Very possibly may be totally different because once again, the population at Peoria High's needs may be different than they were at Manual. So that is what we are looking forward to with Peoria High.
Again, I'm not really too affluent as far as the actual politics of the whole thing is concerned, but I feel that to rely on a grant, I think is wrong. A grant is something that you and I pay for. I don't have the money. I don't know about you guys, but if we are looking for a few $1 million, I think we should be able to get this money from somewhere out of our own deal. If it is $6 million 5 years from now, it's just as bad as $100 now. So this is all I can say, and I hope I've semi-answered your question.
It would seem that the need is there at Central. I'm certainly not an expert on Central High School, but I would say that it's obvious that there's a need in terms of performance, and that fund for that grant might be very beneficial to getting that done, particularly as we've seen what might happen at Manual. Second thing is we need to keep in mind that there's a substantial amount of stimulus money. I believe it was a total of $6 million that was provided in 2 annual installments that will not be there next year. On top of that, the district's payment for debt in terms of bonds, bond principal, and public building commission lease payments is going to increase about $1 million a year for the next 5 years. It's going to increase 48% over the next 5 years. So if you take a look at the current situation right now, the cost of funding the current debt is going to go up every year, and we have to look at alternative sources.
I know what I read in the paper, so let me say that's what I know exactly. But the other thing I know about grants is the state or the government, the feds, give it and they also take it away. And so a little bit of what Mr. Mitchell said is true. If there is some assurance that that money can hang around, that's a good thing. But the other thing that Mr. Cloyd just mentioned is the $6 million in stimulus money that was here is going to be gone. And so it's just a game kind of thing. Now, to Peoria High. Obviously, we're going to have to do restructuring. I don't know if it has to be this year. I don't know. Do you know, Debbie? Does it have to be the next school year? And the only reason I ask her that is because we just combined the majority of Woodruff students with Peoria High. And through this year, they've worked to make a good mesh between the 2 student bodies. And whether you like the administration there or you don't like them, they're there, and the kids respect them, and the families have gotten to know them. And it seems to me a real shame to, on top of just combining 2 schools, to then say, okay, Mr. Simmons, you're gone to do something else. Half the teachers, you're gone to do something else. What we know from a developmental standpoint with kids is it's relationships that is key. And by constantly changing those relationships, we're not giving the kids, the highest risk kids, the security, the emotional, physical security that they need.
I met with the treasurer of District 150 just last Friday, and we were going over some numbers, and he informed me that they have an assumed budget, which is from the federal and the state, and they assume that they're going to get a certain amount of monies coming in, and they already spent it though. The district had spent it already, assuming that they were going to get paid. I don't think that is the right way to do business at all. We should never assume anything is coming in. We have to work with real numbers, a real budget, and we have to stay within that budget. I don't know if that part answered your question or not. And as far as the school, what was the question with the second half of your question?
I'm asking, they have been not able to make your average and yearly progress as they're supposed to. They have to go into restructuring according to no child left behind, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm asking, are you willing to do that? When you get the grant or not, that's beside the point. But are you willing to restructure that school so that children are able to learn? If you keep going down, I think it's been 4 years so far. They have not made any progress. So, what do you plan to do?
Okay.
Restructuring is what it's called.
And that's actually...
Staff, administration.
Mm-hmm. And actually, that is what Dr. Lathan has been trying to develop as a professional development, and actually that would help in that school. You said kind of continuity is what the children need, and that's part of the professional development that Dr. Lathan is putting in place currently with the principals, and accountability as well. If you get those 3 things in hand, the restructuring then is going to fall into place. The programs that we have, like I mentioned Edison before, if we can do a model and have that in that school, the children, we would have the tungsten benchmark would actually give the opportunity for each individual child monthly. We can test them and see where he's progressed or where they need a little bit more help. And that is an individual basis. Then that child, the teacher then can go and the child will be able to have extra help if they need help, or in that one area. So I am for that, but I don't think I am for a grant by the government. I think we have to rely on our sources that we have now, which we do have. We do have in other areas where we are wasting money and spendful wasting.
You be more specific about that. I take it what you're saying is that you will turn down the $6 million. We did that a year or two ago at Central as well. So we really would be turning down $12 million. The annual yearly progress was a problem long before we turned down that $6 million 2 years ago. So that's been there for quite a while, and this seems to be the only way we're going to try to solve that problem is by taking this grant and restructuring Central. But tell me what you would cut. If you say we shouldn't take resources from any other source, we shouldn't take money from the federal government, tell me what you would cut in the district.
I don't think we necessarily have to cut anything. What we have to do is see, hold on, I think what we have to do is look at what the administrators, the teachers, all of District 150 staff we have to look at their individual, what they are paying in their pensions, their health care, their part of the portion. If we can get them, like for instance, in health care, we are spending $13 million for the teachers' health care right now. I just would like to know how much are they willing to pay for on their own, out of their pocket, which would free up more money. We can save jobs that way. We can have the programs that we need locally, and we don't have to raise taxes either.
So you're for adopting the Wisconsin Walker plan?
I support him, yes I do.
I don't support the Wisconsin plan. Guess that probably doesn't surprise you a great deal. But teachers and school employees do currently pay a part of their insurance. I don't know what they pay monthly. Huh?
20%, they
Pay
say.
20% of the cost right now.
I think in Wisconsin it's like 1.6%, something like that.
100%. So that's what I'm saying. 20% is good, but I'm saying if they are willing to put in another 10%, I mean, that's not asking a whole lot.
Well, this is what I would say, having been an educator, and this is where we'll probably have some, we're friends, Jody, remember?
I know.
Okay. Teachers are never paid, well, yes, some are paid what they're worth. Teachers' salaries continue to be low. And one of the things that keeps people in the field are the benefits, and granted, it costs money. It does cost money. I forgot where I was going to go with that. Walker, Wisconsin, yeah. Actually, teachers who retire today, after 35 years in the system, will have a pretty decent retirement, but it'll be nothing like when you say the private sector, and we're talking Caterpillar versus the low, okay? So it's going to be considerably less than what their counterparts are in corporate America, and their salaries have lagged all of those years as well. Someone said to me today, if you didn't like teaching, why would you do it? Because it's certainly not for the salary or the benefits, and it isn't for the kids. It's not good for the kids. So no, I do not agree with the Wisconsin plan. I think that we're chipping away at what is a middle-class society, and we're widening the gap between the haves and the have-nots.
Well, the question is, what would you cut? You have to take a look at the entire budget. You have to be responsible with things such as, do we have the proper funding model for certain things? Do we have the appropriate compensation model for people that come out of teaching and go into administration? Do we have the appropriate mix of cost for benefits and the cost for health care that is provided? And I think the other thing too here is that the school district has taken on a substantial amount of debt. Their debt burden is significant. And one of the things the board needs to do is be able to say no. Now, I know they've built some schools with that debt, but the school district has a substantial amount of debt, and if we don't roll that over and find a way to finance it, or we don't have a way to take care of that debt payment, it's going to make a lot of these other discussions really meaningless, because we're going to be spending a lot of money just funding the debt that's already out there.
The first thing, two things I want to touch on real quickly. On the grant, number one, yes, we've got a lot of debt, and we need to be able to work on our own, but our district will not survive without grant money. Now, what you have to keep in mind with grant money is that it may not be there next year. The grant for the restructuring at Manual and the grant for the restructuring at Peoria High is meant to help us get on our own 2 feet with that restructuring. It is not meant to be there forever. So in other words, we know going in that as we move forward, we have to build our own plan and wean ourselves off of that grant. The other thing I wanted to say was about the stimulus money. For the last 2 years, we knew that money was only going to be there for 2 years. So any positions that were brought forward for us to fund out of stimulus money, it was made very clear to the board, it was made very clear to the employees that they were only good for this year, as long as we had that stimulus money. The other thing is, a lot of that stimulus money was used for one-time expenditures like technology. So we tried very hard not to use it for ongoing programs that we would have to fund out of the education fund. The other thing I will tell you about Peoria High is I am in favor of putting in for this grant, and I know there's going to be a lot of concern in the community about if we have to change that administration. But as a board member, this is what I have to look at. Mr. Simmons has already put in for his retirement. He has 2 years left. So that means that in 2 more years, he will be gone, one way or another. So does that mean that we don't put in for this grant money and keep him around for 2 more years, or do we put in for the grant money and find another position for him in the district where he can be very, very valuable to us in the next 2 years? We did not apply for the grant for Peoria High last year for that specific reason. We knew it was going to be a transition year with combining those 2 high schools. It was going to be very important to have a familiar face there. So that's why we gave it up for a year. And now we have the opportunity again, and we feel like it's time to move forward. We also had some of the Woodruff administrators at Peoria High, so because we felt it was very important that the children see both of those faces. So I just wanted to make those points about those things. The other thing I do want to say is this board, it's very difficult, and we're cutting every place we can. It's difficult when 80% of your budget is salaries and benefits. But we reduced our expenditures last year by $3.5 million. So we know where we have to go. We're trying to do it. We know there's a lot of work yet to do.
There's one thing that I'd like to mention here, that I feel very strongly about, and that is the fact that we started in the United States of America to draw up things like school boards or whatever. It was a matter of saying, well, you go and finance your own stuff. Don't look at us. And still the same thing that I have to say is that we are still paying taxes, that we still have to sort of get our things together, and I don't think we should rely on the government in any way, shape, or form to get hauled out of the deep water.
How do you see yourself supporting staff when they have to make hard decisions? It seems like when there are certain staff that make hard decisions and it brings up controversy either amongst their own staff or within the community, we are very quick to retreat from that person and not give them the support that they need. So how do you see yourself supporting your staff when hard decisions have to be made that may not necessarily be popular?
You are right. That's one of the complaints I've heard a lot in this district, whether it's principals or lower level administrators or teachers, is that they feel like they don't have the support they need. As a school board, we have to give our support to our superintendent. And our new superintendent is going to have to make some very difficult decisions, has already made some difficult decisions and recommendations, and so we have to stand behind her. then it is her job to make sure she stands behind her administrators and stands up for them. It's the same thing as accountability. It works right on down the chain. The principals have to support their teaching staff. That's one of the things that makes a good principal and creates a good atmosphere in the building is they have to feel if they have a problem that they can go to the principal and be supported. And then he or she needs to be able to have that same support. So it works from the top down. It's very important. And you're right, we've got more difficult decisions coming, and the fastest way we will have of losing our good employees, whether it be principals, teachers, or a new superintendent, is for us to not support them when they are trying to do the job we ask them to do.
I'm not too sure what you would like to hear, although I thought the question itself was good. I feel that it is all up to us as individual human beings to get things going, rather than just pointing at half a dozen groups or people that should pull us out of the deep water. I think we should be able to swim, and we should swim well.
I think you're getting to the point of, does the administration get the support of the board, and does that follow on down through the organization, if that's correct? It seems to me that the discussion about accountability is two people agreeing to be able to ask each other hard questions and answer them. And I think if you have accountability in an organization where people are trusting of each other, and they say, you know, I'm going to ask you a hard question, and I'm going to expect a straight answer, and I'm going to give you the right to do the same with me. I think that's part of the relationship that you have to have throughout an organization, and it builds trust. If the board does not trust the superintendent, then there's a real issue there. But if the superintendent has to make hard decisions and the board is with that superintendent, then we need to be able to take the heat and be able to stand up for that person and say this is the right thing, and we need to be accountable to that person, and they need to be accountable to us. I'm not afraid of making tough decisions, but each individual member of the school board has no authority on their own. They only have authority acting as a board. And if they act as a board and they do that with thorough discussion and with accountability to each other, I think you've got a much better situation and a chance to provide the trust and support that the school and its administration need.
I don't know how to answer that question other than how they have, I guess. It seems to me that the support is based on relationships and trust and honesty and openness and fairness. And I think, LaCollis, you maybe alluded to if a situation where there was an employee or a situation where we had to back off because that was somebody's friend or so, you know, whatever. I would hope we could get beyond that, but I know human nature, and I also know the district for many, many, many years, and how much of that favoritism, perhaps is the word, or friendship overcame good decision-making. I think that's happened. I hope the new superintendent can get has and can continue to have a grasp on that and to make fair decisions and to support her administrative team as she needs to. But when you started that, my mind went immediately to who's supporting the kids. And we went all the way to teachers, but nobody said anything about kids. And our students, many of our students come to school with much baggage, and I mean little kids as well as big kids. And somewhere along the line, we've got to have this mutual support system so that, I hate to say trickles down, because I think kids ought to be on top, but you know, we've got to be able to support those students. A while ago, somebody mentioned feeling good about feeling good or something. You know, if kids feel that they can accomplish something, a lot of our problems in the classroom will diminish. They won't disappear, but they'll diminish. You were talking about that, Rick. But kids have to feel that they are good at something, or at least reasonable at something. And they need a lot of support in order to be able to do that. And that isn't just praise, dishonest praise. It means you really are able to do that. and how great that is for a boy or girl that's 6 years old. So I think the support thing goes both ways. I would hope that there's some teamwork. I do believe the strategic plan, which I alluded to before, had lots of ideas for how that could be carried out. Whether that's happening or not sure.
I agree with Ms. Deisler on what she said about the children as well, that there has to be communication and openness and security that they feel among their teachers and any of the District 150 employees. I also believe that the parent participation is also key in building a relationship as well. I think trust and relationship building and honesty among the school board and superintendent and the teachers, the principals, it does trickle down like you said, but I think it does have to focus on the children and the relationship that we provide with them as well.